Don't be nervous. We're going to talk about it, both the positives and the negatives, but to keep everything very Neptune themed, we are going to name this time of your life as a Neptunian thing, which is going to be a movie. So I want you to think of this era of your life as Legally Blonde. You are Elle Woods. Neptune in Aries opens you up for so many romantic opportunities if you are not in a romantic relationship right now. But it also is going to be a amazing placement for like partying. Like think of Neptune, this is how I think of Neptune, as kind of like its own separate god of partying, like Bacchus. Neptune rules over alcohol and spirits and things like that. And obviously that can have its both positives and negatives. So, a lot like Elle in Legally Blonde, you can find yourself in romantic situations that one start very quickly, but also end very quickly. Neptune is about like things that dissolve, but also it's about romance and dreaminess and all those things. Aries is great at starting things, not so great at finishing things. It's impulsive. And so, much like Elle in the beginning of the movie, she is chasing this dream of love and she's over idealizing Warner. And she comes to a time where all of that kind of crumbles and she's having to pick herself up afterward and kind of start something new. That is what Neptune and Aries in the fifth is doing. It is teaching you that people are going to come and go. And you will constantly have to say goodbye, but pick yourself up and keep it moving, come out stronger. Neptune and Aries in the fifth definitely has its own star power. It's very unique. It's very look at me, very dramatic, I guess we could even say. But it's kind of like a siren in that way where it really just draws people in. Fifth house is going to be where we find our charisma, our boldness, how we express ourselves. Aries definitely does a lot of self-expression along with the fifth house. And so when Neptune is there, it becomes like this fierce, creative self-expression. So if you are an artist, this is an amazing time for you. I cannot imagine what you will crank out, but it also opens itself up to a lot of creative problem solving, like we see with Elle Woods, but also we see her really shine as somebody very unique in this new environment when she goes to Harvard. I think of that scene where she's walking up Capitol Hill and everybody's in black and she's in pink. But she's confident, she knows that she is supposed to be there, and she's doing the damn thing. And then from the way that she organizes and puts her little like creative touches that are just so intrinsically her. Like I think of that scene where her resume is scented. That is something that is very like Neptune and Aries, like not that specifically, but it's an example of how it puts its own like creative, unique spin on something that is so mundane, and it makes it a little bit more exciting and a little bit more like personal and self-expressive. And I love that Saturn and Neptune are going to be in Aries at the same time, because Neptune was actually discovered very close to Saturn when it was initially discovered. And so they actually have a lot to do with each other. I don't think that in more mainstream astrology this is talked about, but it is something that I learned a lot about when I was in astrology school. It is that there is like this very mystical side to Saturn. And we also see this again with Elle when she decides to go to Harvard. It starts off as like this impulsive, almost very shallow way of trying to win Warner back, but it turns into this idealism that she can make this man want her and feed into this like romance story with her. It starts off as such a shallow flaw, but it becomes her greatest strength at the end of the movie because she finds purpose. And Neptune is definitely like our own like divine purpose and finding our purpose. And I cannot express how much that fits with Neptune and Aries in the fifth. Now, here's the thing. Neptune also lacks boundaries. So remember we were talking about romantic situations and the opportunity for that. And I think you will have a lot of opportunities to connect with a lot of new people, a lot of new friends, because I do think that fortunately and unfortunately, friendship circles will get smaller. You'll start to see some friendships just kind of dissolved, fall away, all of those things. But it gives you an opportunity to act You'll have to initiate finding new community with Neptune and Aries in the fifth, since it is opposite Libra in your 11th. So you'll see some relationships just kind of dissolve. It's just going to be what it is. But we see sextiles happening between the third, the ninth, and what else? The sixth, as well as the 11th. It is the sixth, right? Sorry, I'm doing my math wrong. Not the sixth, the seventh, which all have to do with connection. The third house can have a lot to do with communication, learning new things. So the people that you meet can be extremely inspiring, since the third house for Sag risings is going to be Aquarius. And then, of course, you have Gemini, which is the seventh house, which is literally relationships. And it has a lot to do with leisure and fun as well. The ninth house has to do with your beliefs, and then the 11th house has to do with friends and community. So you have a lot of opportunities. All of those houses are making sextiles to your fifth house. And so you have to act on those things. You have to initiate that. You have to essentially reach out for connection, because what I do see on the downside also with Neptune and Aries in the fifth is there can be this tendency, because Mars is going to be the ruler of not only your fifth, but also your 12th. There can be this tendency to self-sabotage and fall into loneliness, or try and like self-soothe with other substances or some sort of like escapism tactic. And it can be substances, it can be, the first thing I think of is like smoking, because Aries is hot, or it's a fire sign, and Neptune is water, and so I think of steam, smoke. But it can be anything. But essentially, yeah, trying to like kind of fill a hole, instead of addressing certain issues that have to do with the second and the eighth house. This could also be a time where, if you're trying to get pregnant, that can come into focus quite a bit. I could definitely see. But overspending and overindulging, you can kind of lose the plot of your budget, so just be careful about that. But like I was saying, when it comes to connecting with other people, be very careful. Just like how we see in Legally Blonde, like towards the end of the movie, her professor like pushes the boundary. Neptune doesn't have boundaries. And so you will find, whether you allow this or not, people will test your boundaries. And Aries is, of course, ruled by Mars. And so it can be like people that come out of nowhere, or like people that you let get close to you. Sorry, not that come out of nowhere, because we're talking about 12th house and 5th house. So it can be like romantic partners, or people that you do let close to you. It doesn't just have to be romantic partners that test your boundaries or try to take advantage of your generosity or of you in general. And so just be very aware of that, because Aries can be a lot about defense. And so I'm not telling you to not trust anybody, but I am saying, just like in the movie, it's really good to be discerning and on your guard about when your boundaries are being tested, and act quickly on that. That is the time to be impulsive. Neptune in Aries is very emotionally impulsive, but I think that in that way, Neptune in Aries can be a really good. That's a really good way to express it, is to nip it in the bud right away. But to wrap all of this up, we want to really focus in on that this is a time where you want to actively reach out for connection. It's going to be very tempting to want to just kind of isolate. Neptune can be great at creativity and diving into divination and spirituality as a hobby, or something that really brings you a lot of joy in the fifth house. But it can also be very tempting to want to just completely isolate from other people, especially like if you're doing any travel. Self-travel and doing stuff on your own and romanticizing your life in that way can be amazing, but definitely make sure that you're not drowning in the isolation of Neptune. Or like basically just kind of self-sabotaging in that way by falling into that loneliness. Getting more active in like water sports or something a bit more artistic, or getting into music, picking up some sort of instrument hobby, or a child, if you have children, can also be the person like picking these things up as well, since the fifth house is children. And I think the last thing I want to say is, remember that it's good to continue innovating and being creative, but make sure you don't lose structure and foundation, But this video is almost 10 minutes long, and I'm going to get off of here. Hopefully this was helpful, and I will talk to you guys in the next one.